Good afternoon, friends. My name's Justin. I play guitar on songs in Nashville, and today I want to talk about getting multiple different sounds out of a single amp and a single guitar. It's kind of a secret, an open secret in Nashville that most of us who play on records, we might bring 5, 6, 7, 8 amps to a session, but we've all got a home base for the most part. By that I mean we have one amp that we kind of stick to. For me, it's typically my tuxedo Bassman, my old blonde Bassman. It's a transitional amp with a black faceplate and black Tolex, but it's the earlier 6G, 6V presence knob circuit. People will call them presence knob Bassmans, white knob Bassmans, blonde Bassmans from the blonde Tolex or whatever. You can do just about anything on that amp, you know, and several of us have them and use them and kind of start on them. And you know, I'll say that we typically switch guitars and change up some pedals to get different sounds, rather than like go and plug into a 100-watt Marshall. Sometimes in some of these rooms that we're playing in, your speaker cab's in a small closet, and if you start pushing 100 watts through that cab, you're going to hear that the speakers are being choked a little bit. That it can't move the air in that little room the way it wants. So, you know, sometimes, I mean, you can't even crank a Bassman in there, let alone have a 100-watt plexi running. So in this video, I want to talk about different sounds that we get with our pedal boards. And I'm going to show you some of the scenes that I have set up on my HX. And I'm actually going to have those for sale as well. If you hear something you like, I'm going to go through 3 scenes, $5 each, okay? I'll just put my Venmo on the screen. You can send me $5 and tell me which one you want. Or if you want all 3, great. We'll go through all those, but I kind of want to talk about this little pedal board that I have. I'm going to be playing my 335. Let's see, I have everything off on the board. I'm running into my analog outfitter, Sarge. It sounds really good. And I'm running this amp the way that I love to run all my amps, on the edge of breakup, okay? I like to be able to dig in and get some grit, but to back off and have that sort of cleanish sound. Okay, so let's go through this board. I've got a turbo tuner on it. I like it because it's just super fast and it's super accurate. It's more accurate than your guitar can be. Your guitar, even if you've got it set up with great intonation and really dialed in, it's still a system of compromises. And it's the hardest thing that I deal with on sessions where I'm playing with a bunch of loops or synth instruments, stuff in the box, things that were kind of built out on a computer, you know. All that stuff's tempered perfectly, and a guitar just is not. So it can be a problem. My sort of home base is this scene on my HX. It's having some dirt on the amp like you're hearing, and if I want just a little more, I'll turn on the odr-c booster. So I keep like a decent spring reverb that's, I don't want it to be overwhelming. I can just tell it's there, but when I'm playing, it's still there, but it's not in the way, you know. If I'm playing like a rock rhythm guitar part, that's so much better just dry. So, but I do keep the spring on there, and then I have kind of a more intense reverb. And I'll do that more for swells than anything. That doesn't usually squeak when I use it with my foot, but it's squeaking with my hand. Okay, let's turn off the heavy reverb. I have a 16th note slapback. When I say 16th note, what that means is that this micro clock is feeding tempo to the H9, the HX, and my little Echoplex pedal here. Now with the toe up, the heel down on my expression pedal, this is a volume pedal, this is an expression pedal. I realize I haven't talked about the rest of the board yet. I'll walk you through these other pedals real quick. With the heel down, 1 repeat on the slapback. If I want a couple more, about halfway down. If I go all the way down, it's like, there's a lot of them, okay? And if I slow this down, what did we go to? Yeah, how about like 70? I heard about 20 of those slapbacks, so that's cool. And then I have an 8th note delay that I've modeled after, I kind of dialed it in myself to try to sound somewhat like an STD 3000, the Daniel Lanois delay. So it's got a bit of modulation. And this one too, tied to this expression pedal. So about halfway down, Moss distortion. It's good for those like. And again, I can play that with the heel down. Just means you have less tail, basically, right? So those kinds of sounds, those are cool. Yeah, this is my Moss distortion. I don't have a fuzz on the board. I've got this extra little power jack here, and I'll use that with a jumper cable, and I'll put a fuzz pedal off to the side of the board, like my Throbak, which I love. I've got a Morgan fuzz that I really like. I'll even put the Keeley, the one that's part Bluesbreaker, part OCD, the Blues Disorder. I love that pedal. I love the Bluesbreaker sounds on that. I'll put that off to the side of the board. It's kind of a flavor of the day thing. So the fuzziest that my board gets, I've got a couple fuzzes dialed in on the HX, which are really cool. I'll show you that scene. Again, $5. But my Moss distortion is pretty woolly. It's more of an overdrive, but you can hear it. Let's not have the RC booster pushing into it, because that's going to make it a little more unruly. With a little slapback, you know. It sounds good. I really did that. So, moving right along, how about a little reverb and tremolo? That always sounds great. That's a good baritone setting, to be honest. And that tremolo, it's tempo locked. So if I tap something in that's a lot faster, and that's not the only tremolo on here. I've got basically a really fast helicopter tremolo. But this tremolo is also attached to the expression pedal, so it gets real wacky. A little too much, right, to use very often, but still, it's fun. So that scene is kind of home base when I'm getting mics placed in the studio and they're setting preamp levels and I'm plugged into my Bassman or maybe my Morgan Tweed amp. I kind of judge how those things sound into the amp to decide if, okay, this is cool, you know. If there's something real peaky in the high mids with where the mic placement is, I can hear that better when some reverb's on, you know, or I can hear it a bunch of times in a row if a delay pedal's on, right? So I'll use that. I'll use that to figure that out. Let's go to a different scene. So that's my first scene. Let's go over to this one. Okay, so. So this is my Nordland. That's the only thing you're hearing. It's a great pedal. That plus the RC booster with a little Echoplex. Pretty saturated. Now, if I want like a real back in black kind of guitar tone, I think of that as a pretty clean amp with no pedals pushing it. So a lot of times I'll tune my guitar and just unplug from the board and go straight into the amp and turn the amp up. And to me, that's more open and dynamic than any pedal pushing the front end of an amp. And I know a lot of you guys can't do that. You can't just crank an amp because your cab isn't necessarily in a super isolated place. But if you're one of those guys who on your live rig you're playing into an aux box or something like that, like you can take advantage of your amp circuitry on 10 without blowing everybody's heads off because it's controlled, you know. So not being able to do that, I'll dial some of the overdrives way down, you know. Tom talks about this on his channel. I think there's a video of him talking about it on Blackbird's channel as well, where you have all these different flavors, and the gain levels are so low that you can stack them really nicely and get them to kind of cascade into each other. That works out fantastic for low volume situations, getting an amp-like feel, you know. It really does. You should try it. Turn all your overdrive and boost pedals down to like 9 o'clock, and get them to where all they're doing is sort of adding more gain, and then have an EQ pedal after all of them that is your decibel jump. Okay, so my EQ pedal, you can see it's kind of set for mids. So for a solo, wrong delay for a solo, really. But if say it was this. So anyway, that's kind of, I tend to leave these things, and then if I really want a solo tone out of one of these two pedals, I either have the RC on in front of it as well, or the EQ pedal on with it, right? Sometimes both if it gets really hairy. But running these two together is a little much because I got this one pretty fuzzy, and this has got a decent amount of breakup as well. So back to the scenes on the HX. This one, I've got a nice subtle spring verb, again, just for a little bit of dimension and space. Whoops, I touched it. If you touch and hold, it'll go into the setup menu for that effect, right? I really like this. Great sounding tremolo, and it's tempo locked as well, so I can get it nice and slow. And sometimes I'm not even trying to tempo lock it, I just want to slow it down, so I tap much slower than the song. Now the micro clock, I think it takes like 3 taps, might just take 2, but it's feeding the HX, the H9, and the Echoplex. And if I want to get like a slapback out of the Echoplex, I can override the microclock just by turning the time knob on the Echoplex. But once I touch the microclock again, it overrides the time knob. Okay, so kind of got to remember what's going on with that pedal when I'm not using it, what it's currently listening to, you know, in terms of the time. So I have a another tremolo. This might be cool with some reverb. You notice in a really thick reverb like this, you lose some of the sharpness of that that tremolo. It's a ramp wave tremolo. So without the reverb on, you can hear it jump and cut off, right? It's like a asymmetrical triangle, right? It's like a right triangle. So I'll use that for different things, and then I've got this basically a wah setting. So I'll use that for just filter type stuff with it parked like that. You know, you can get some cool. If I turn it off, you know, it's still cool. So last effect is this cosmic echo. Listen to this. It's like a multi-head space echo, and I think I have heads 2 and 3 turned on. So whatever the tempo is, I don't love it for playing solos. There's just a lot of, you know, after the note. So, but for rhythmic stuff and sort of like kind of ambient bed sounds, it's fantastic. So let me show you one more scene that I really like, that I use quite a bit. This is where I actually use some of the Overdrive world patches on the HX, and they're fuzzes. They're both fuzzes. All right, so nothing else on. So check this out. This one's pretty cool. Now the two of them together is pretty cool too. You notice with that reverb, it got a bit messy, right? Fuzz and reverb, any sort of rhythmic low-end information, whether it's power chords or single note riffs, you got to be careful with the reverb. It's like you made this nice sand castle and then you just go smear it. That's what I think too much reverb does to your sound. So, how about some pitch vibrato with the reverb and both fuzzes? That's awesome, right? Super, super cool. Now, these other sounds, I've got a whammy, and the line 6 whammy is not amazing. So I kind of use it as like a really synthy, awful 12 string, like bad in a cool way 12 string. You get too many notes going and it can get kind of confused. Oh yeah, there's some really weird artifacts happening there. Okay, so last effect I'm going to show you. I have a harmonizer and I basically set it to, it's saved for whatever the last key I used it in. I think it's F sharp. So this is cool. Check this out. It's my own really bad version of Imogen Heap. It's fun though, man. It really is fun. And you know, the weirder the stuff gets, the more sparingly I use it. You know, you don't want to be known as the guy that's like, oh, he's got those weird sounds that now we're tired of. You do not want that. You just don't. So anyway, those are all my sounds. You know, if I pick up my Jazzmaster or my Tele or a baritone, it's kind of like the character of everything changes. You know, I'm using a good amp that doesn't take over. All my guitars sound like themselves through it, whether I'm on a session with my Bassman or my Morgan Tweed, or I'm home with the Sarge. My Deluxe Reverb is good about that. My Princeton Reverb is good about that. And then I just kind of carve from a good sounding amp as a starting point, right? And like I said in the beginning of the video, everybody in Nashville does that. I have doubled up with every other guitar player in town on a session, and we all pretty much, we're not switching amps every song. We're really not. You know, I've got some studios that I go to that I think the Bassman sounds the best in. I've got others that I think the Morgan Tweed sounds the best in. I have certain clients who like specific amps. The Cody Johnson camp, I use my space heater amp back there on the table. It's a 5-watt. I don't even know what it is. It's like it's got a click EQ, kind of like the click channel of a Matchless, but it's a 5-watt kind of a champ style circuit, I guess. And I run it out to a big 212 cab at 8 ohms, and it sounds really good. But it only puts out 5 watts. So if I'm going to switch between that and my Bassman all day or all week, like the engineer is going to have to redial every time I change from a, 40 or 60 watt Bassman or whatever it is to a 5-watt. Single-ended champ or whatever. So anyway, if you want those patches, I'm gonna be building some other ones as well, and I have a ton saved in there, but any one of those 3, just let me know, send me a Venmo and tell me which one you want. If you want all 3 of them, then great, and I'll send you the link to those patches. So have a good one. See you later.